Try to put the music louder.
Does it need to be louder?
I like it loud.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be. Oops. Didn't mean to do that.
It'd be easier if you put it over there.
I know, but that thing is there. Does it matter?
What's that?
Nothing. Or, and there we go. Perfecto.
All right. So we're going?
Yep.
All right. All right, let's about 10 minutes we'll get started. Just give everyone a chance to get back in.
Okay.
All right.
In
the meantime, just groove to the music. All right. Let's give people a little time to get back in. The family is bopping to the music. about another 4 minutes till we jump back in. That's okay, David. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. Sabbath is a feast day, actually. Chips and salsa. That is the perfect Chag Matzot meal. Shalom, George. The red kippa is very specially symbolizes that's the color of the one I grabbed. I'm not trying to be some official person with a special color hat that symbolizes something. It's no, it's just what it is. Here at home, I have a whole stack of kippot that I have gained from various different spots. Usually it's from a wedding or something, although I think the printing on this one's a little far gone. So a lot of times for a wedding or an anniversary or a bar mitzvah or something like that, someone will buy a bunch of kippot and then have it imprinted on the inside, the date and the names of the people involved, so you keep it as a keepsake. And I have a whole bunch of those at home, and they're various different colors and styles and designs. This album, it's online. We decided this is low tech. We're basically playing it on the TV, and it's loud enough to be heard in here. But yeah, it's really, really great. It's an Israeli group. It's KSM, Kappa Sam Mary. I believe that's one of the websites they use. It is. What's that? Yeah, no. There is a group. Someone in the previous session asked if it was Mikedim, and the answer is partially correct. Yes, a number of the people involved in these. This is actually, I think it's a group doing congregation worship, but organizing it in sort of a large scale. And so every other year or so they put out a new album with new worship music, and it's much, much nicer kind of quality and energy and all that kind of good stuff. So it's definitely worth. KSM is one of the websites they use to do this, and ever since I've been mentally at rest with this vacation we've been enforced on, as my brain power has gone way down. As my memory and recollection's gone way down. I hope I can get back to normal when things get back to normal. Yeah, peanut butter and honey. Great sandwich. I'm having to back way off of my carbohydrates, which is really hard to do this time of year. So I've sampled the matzahs, but I haven't done the usual, pizza, peanut butter and jelly matzah sandwich kind of thing, which is what I would usually do, trying to cut down on my carb intake. I've actually ordered some of the music from the website. Oh, it's I think it's MJAI. Also, is another website that handles this stuff. Messianic Jewish Alliance of Israel. MJIA, something like that. AI, MJAI. Actually, I can run and take a look at the screen and see if I can pull off the name. So my brain is just not what it used to be. My eyes are going crazy. My brain's getting foggy. I'm about ready to run for public office. Hold on a second. Yes, Messianic Jewish Alliance of Israel, MJAI. You can get a lot of this stuff. They have a web store. You can get a ton of this stuff. Or you can, actually what we did, we found it on YouTube. We did a search for Messianic worship, and these guys popped up. So we've been enjoying them for a while now. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm a little over on our break. Can we... Excuse me. Can we cut that now? Thank you. The music went away. Okay. Let's see. I still haven't fixed the times for the meeting. Just basically, 11 o'clock for the prayer service, and I guess we can plan for about 12:30. It's one of the things I didn't remember to do is change that to 12:30. That's basically going to be the 3 items on our normal meeting until we get back to meeting face to face. Okay. Let's go ahead and, oops, where is, that's not it. Okay, what did I do?
What are you looking for?
Trying to get the chat back up and this up where it should be.
Is that what you wanted?
Actually, that's fine. I can just click on this.
Okay. Ooh, matzo pizza.
Matza rakza. Kelly's rocking with her matzah. Raksa with the matzah. Okay, yeah. That's another thing. Little matzah pizza, little turkey pepperoni, some cheese. Okay, let's take a look at our bulletin. Walk through the bulletin. Okay, so don't worry about the timing on the schedule for the day. I'll get this cleaned up to it's a little more proper and actually accurate, God willing, for next week. And again, my apologies for not being on the ball and calling for, what is now next week's reading, Shmini. I had set up for this week, and then yesterday when I was organizing things, realized that I had misdirected you all. Today is Shabbat Chol HaMoed, which is the Sabbath of the festival, and we had special readings for that. And so this is what's going to be our Parsha discussion for today. Is this addition, this insertion that I messed up on? It's not that I always catch this in normal time, but with everything else happening, I'm just not totally settled in. This is all new technology, and this is all new method of functioning, and I'm just not used to not having the back and forth, the talking back and forth. Anyways. Then the one thing I did fix on our timeline is down at the bottom of the first page, we have Wednesday online class at 6 o'clock. Book of Galatians. We're in the second part of the first chapter. Most of this last week was restarting and just we're laying out a lot of historical and groundwork and stuff like that. So now we're gonna start getting into a lot of the fun stuff. Okay, on the top of the second side, next week's reading. This time it's correct, trust me. And then tonight is Yom HaBikurim, the Feast of First Fruits. This is the actual time of Messiah's resurrection, right about sundown on Saturday evening. I mentioned it, I think, in our Galatians class on Wednesday. I think I forgot to mention it in last week's Shabbat meeting, that this year is really special in that the days actually lay out the way they do in the Brit Chadashah. In the way the timing of everything laying out, because Yeshua's Passover was at the beginning of the 14th of Nisan, or 14th of the Aviv. He had, he was arrested that night. The trial overnight, the trial with Pilate the next morning, the execution, about noon or so. Dies around 3 o'clock ish. And then is buried in the ground before sundown that day. And that's about the same time then that the Pharisee tradition was to start Passover on the end of the 14th. So about the time the Pharisees are sitting down to start their Passover, Yeshua has already been buried. And there's a little room for some confusion if you don't catch that there's two timelines going on here. The timing that Yeshua did more closely matched what the Sadducees were doing. They read the Bible to say that the beginning of the 14th of the Aviv was the time to begin the Passover. The Pharisees, by the time of Yeshua, had developed a different tradition of starting their Passover at the end of the 14th, which basically smashes the Passover meal into the next evening, which is Chag Matzot, the beginning of the feast of the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is a special Sabbath which is gives you a clue as to when Yeshua was buried, because he had to be put into the ground before that. In some texts of the Bible, it's listed as a high Sabbath or a special Sabbath, and that would have been that first evening of Chag Matzot. So, and then you have 3 days and 3 nights. Actually, 3 nights and 3 days, technically. Starting at sundown on, as we count it, Wednesday. You have Wednesday night, Thursday's day 1, Friday's day 2, Saturday's day 3, Saturday night sundown. And I've actually, I had called for, not for us to have a public gathering, but to do, for you guys to do at home. And I had put up, and hopefully it's posted on the website now, the lecture handout notes for Yom HaBikurim. So you guys can do this at home. It's pretty much straightforward. Realistically, the way we do it nowadays, it's more just a party and a Bible study than it is any special activities, because all the special activities for Yom HaBikurim happened around the temple, so there's really not much to do at home except to hang out together. So that's it's a special evening, and then tonight we begin counting the Omer. The Omer is that sheaf of barley that is harvested Saturday night after sundown, and is presented before the Lord every day, every evening after that, for 50 days. And we'll talk about that more in the coming week. We'll cover that in more detail, but that's basically it. So you should have up on the website a handout for Yom HaBikurim. Pretty much it's just a read and follow through the scriptures, and that's pretty straightforward. So enjoy this year. This is special. It's very frequent that this exact timing doesn't work, because our the lunar calendar that God had given us to do only very infrequently works it out to where the exact number of days that we read in the Brit Chadashah are actually done. And this year it's done. This is special, so pay attention to it and enjoy that. So you'll notice that in Orthodox circles they've already begun counting the Omer. That's because of an assumption they make. And again, this is more in line with the Pharisee tradition, the way they do it, and we tend to do it more along the Sadducee tradition, which is a little closer, I think, to the way the Bible reads. That we're to wait for the evening after the close of the weekly Sabbath, and that's how we're going to do it. So tonight at sundown we'll begin Yom HaBikurim, and it'll be celebrating the resurrection of Messiah. Okay. Then next week, so that's tonight. Then next week, Tuesday evening, is the evening of Chag Matzot, the last day of Chag Matzot. Again, this is commanded to be a Sabbath of don't do your regular work. Okay? And that continues on through the day of Wednesday the 15th. Then following that, we will have a couple other things for the rest of the month. These are well, one's biblical, the others are pretty much traditional. Yom HaShoah is up this week. The Holocaust Memorial Day is, the week after, I should say, the week after. On the 20th, on Monday evening, the 20th. On Friday evening, Friday during the day is Yom HaAliyah, Israel Immigration Day. And that night is, if the calendar is correct with the actual phase, that evening is Rosh Chodesh Iyar. That's the beginning of the new month, the month of Iyar. And then the Monday following is Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day. And then the next day is Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. And so Yom HaZikaron is it's considered a minor fast. Some people will fast on that day. It's a day of seriousness. It's kind of the way they do it. They sort of wrap up what our version of Memorial Day would be right next to 4th of July, followed by 4th of July. It starts off, acknowledging all the people who have died, making Israel a safe and independent state. And then that evening is the celebration of the creation and the creation of the state of Israel. This is, by the way, is the biblical calendar. I think it's in is it May? Is the English calendar date for Israel Independence Day. This is actually the biblical calendar day. So that's our bulletin. Any questions, comments, rebukes as far as the bulletin is concerned? So I'm trying to catch up on some of the posts. Second Samuel reference, Kelly, you're mentioning? Yeah, Gail, I would agree. Matzah, Hershey's chocolate, and a kosher coconut marshmallow. Definitely not keto, but yes, delicious. I've been avoiding checking my blood sugar since Passover. There's too many good things to eat. It's going to be. We're not gathering. It's going to be if we're doing it at home. Just wait till sundown, and then you can begin. Yom HaBikurim. There should be on the website a posting of the lecture notes and handout for Yom HaBikurim. Okay. Yeah, since you can get the kosher marshmallow, even Rice Krispie treats can be kosher now. Okay. If that's all we have for the bulletin, let me bring up. Where am I here? Oh, wrong thing. Push the wrong button.
My goodness, my voice. What are you looking for?
Can bring that up and then this. Okay, so now's your time to dust off your fingers. Questions, comments, rebukes with regards to our Parsha? Yeah, thank you. We need to get back to Exodus.
If you want to move to a different chapter, just press these arrows.
Yeah. Okay, so we were starting on 33, right?
Yeah. Sorry, one more.
Starting at verse 12, was it?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
12, 21 to 51.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Not that one, just kidding.
All right.
12 to
we have
34.
the text up at least. Yeah, David, Ezekiel 37's in that. We have... yeah, thank you, Yafa. Yeah, I was afraid I might have gotten it up a little too late for you to get it, for you to have Ken get it on the website. Yeah, Shmini is actually next week. Yeah, sorry about that. That was my mistake. I misread the fact that we have an insertion. There's actually no Torah reading in the schedule this week. Traditionally they don't do Torah readings on the Chol HaMoed. I don't know why. But so I'm doing we're doing the reading for the Chol HaMoed Pesach reading. Yeah, in our reading schedule, there's no Torah reading on Chol HaMoed Pesach, but there's no Torah no regular cycle, I should say, but there is Torah portion here that we did. It's on our particular list from Flame Foundation. The full 2 Samuel reference. Let me see. So next week will be the 18th. Tazria. I'm sorry. No, sorry. Next week is Shmini. 2 Samuel 6:1 to 7:17. That's what I have on the list here. Okay. I think there is a link on the website to go to. It'll send you to where this reading schedule is posted on the Flame Foundation website. But what I can do is I do have a PDF version of it on my computer. I can send it up and have it posted on our website. Also, that might be the easier way to do it. Oops, I'm in the wrong spot again. Yeah, 6:1 to 7:17. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So this is going to be a little discombobulated this time because I didn't call up the right one to everybody when I was advertising this. So my mistake. So that's one of the reasons that we read through it all during the prayer service, so that we're all in the same. At least we're starting off in the same spot now. Okay. So we start off with a very interesting conversation between Moshe and God. It's kind of interesting. Moshe's got an interest in seeing God. And we've had this conversation before. God and Moses have had this conversation before. But now God's actually going to do it. And with some very interesting things. Okay. But it's kind of interesting because God shows his favor to Moshe by, he says, I know you by name and you have found favor in my sight. Now, remember your translation. Some translations will say grace. And this is where the word grace is applied in a more clear setting with the translation finding favor. We talked about this on Wednesday with the opening of Galatians, that the typical definition of grace being unmerited favor doesn't seem to actually work in the context of the scriptures, whereas grace does seem to work better as merited favor, which is kind of an opposite concept. But if you look at it, there are instances where you just can't call grace unmerited favor, and this conversation is one of them. Okay, because if grace is to be defined as unmerited favor, then when God says to Moses, you're a stinking rascal, but I'm going to hang out with you anyways because I gave you grace and you have not merited anything. It doesn't work. But and so a more useful translation for us, it'd be more in the way of finding favor or status, acceptance, would be a better definition. And as you go through the Bible, it took me a while to work through this, so I'm not going to demand everybody agree with me immediately, but I'm going to ask you to look at ask you to just look at it and think about it, and every time you run into that word grace, ask yourself, is this merited favor or unmerited favor? Is it something somebody's done that God says, I like what you're doing? Or is it something that somebody has failed or refused that God says, I'll put up with you anyways. I love you anyways. And so, start working as you run into that word in your Bibles, just start thinking about it. Okay. Okay. So you have an interesting thing, and you have this, and it's not that God was not willing to do what he's going to do, but it was sometimes it was a matter of timing. It's time for Israel to hit the road, to leave Mount Sinai, and to start following after God as the pillar of smoke, the pillar of fire, the presence of the Lord. Sometimes it's called the angel of the Lord. Sometimes even Yeshua is equated as being this entity that is the pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke. So Moses is basically saying, hey, look, we're not all together on the right page, but please hang out with us and show us your ways. And we are your people, therefore, take good care of us. And so what happens then is that God says, okay. It's like Moses is saying, God says yes, and Moses keeps arguing. It probably was too easy a response for Moses to accept. But anyways, so God's going to show his favor, and he ends the chapter with saying, I'm going to pass by, cover your face with my hand so you don't see me, but then I'll pass by and can see my backside. And so this happens in the next chapter. But before you come up there, cut for yourself 2 more tablets of stone, like the first ones. Now, the first time God cut the stones. This time Moses is ordered to copy that. And in the morning, come on up and we'll do this. Okay. And we have a very interesting section in verse 5, chapter 34. Adonai descended in the cloud, stood with him there, and pronounced the name of Adonai. Adonai passed before him and proclaimed Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, the personal name of God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, or the way it's spelled out in the Masoretic text is Yehovah. Other people like to argue different things, but I'm going to go with what the Masoretes said until somebody who is actually more authoritative can give me a better explanation. Is God merciful and compassionate, slow to anger, rich in grace and truth? By the way, what really is the name of God? What is really the name of God? This is a bit of a trick question, although we've gone through this many times before, and kind of every year we go through this. Okay, but it's a little bit of a trick question if you haven't heard it before. Okay, what do we call God's name? Okay, now in the word in Hebrew for name is Shem. Shem in Hebrew has the same meaning as it is in English. It's the thing that it's the handle by which we address somebody. Like Robert, his name is Shem, so we call him Shem. Okay. But there's also more to it. It's not just what we call you when it's time for dinner. It's also who you are, what you do, the people you know, your associations, your likes, your dislikes, all the things you are. That's your name. And so what you see here is after you have Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, then you have God explaining who he is. And this, by the way, then is all his name. This is the name of God. Okay? Merciful and compassionate, slow to anger, rich in grace and truth, showing grace to the thousandth generation, forgiving offenses, crimes, and sins, yet not exonerating the guilty, but causing the negative effects on the parents' offenses to be experienced by their children and their children's and children's children, even by the third and fourth generations. I like this translation. Okay? And so what's happening here? God showing that he is capable of showing us his mercy and his compassion. Okay? Rich in grace and truth. Okay? In this case, you can make the argument that grace could also mean forgiveness. Okay? But also acknowledging status and acceptance. Okay? Showing grace, status, and acceptance to the thousandth generation, forgiving offenses, crimes, and sins. Notice he forgives us, okay, yet not exonerating the guilty. Okay. Now we see this over and over and over again, and we're going to see this especially through the book of Numbers during the wanderings, Bamidbar in the wilderness, that the people sinned and there are some serious consequences. Did God forgive? Yes, he forgave, but the people that sinned will die. So there are consequences even when we're forgiven. And this is part of our misunderstanding of grace, that God does not have to erase from us the consequences of our sins. He will forgive us of our sins, but sometimes he makes us walk through the consequences of our sins anyways. Okay, and so not exonerating the guilty, but causing the negative effects of the parents' offenses to be experienced by their children and grandchildren, even by the third and fourth generation. So, is God being mean? No, but he's teaching us all a lesson. Okay? That refusing to walk in God's ways has negative consequences. And those negative consequences are felt by the people who follow us in our families. Okay? I think the example that we use most often, and it's quite good. If your parents are alcoholics, you have to live with the results of their being alcoholics. Even if they turn to the Lord and seek forgiveness and find forgiveness, but they maintain their alcoholism, there are consequences. Even though they're forgiven, there are consequences that you are going to grow up feeling. Okay? If dad can't keep a job because he's drunk all the time, you're going to grow up poor and needy. And that's going to affect you. It's going to change. It's going to affect your expectations in the world, and it's also going to set up a negative tendency to follow in your parents' footsteps. And so, that's sort of a kind of thing. That you can end up, and even that, now you're going to grow up in less than ideal circumstances, and you may not be able to undo all those negative circumstances by the time you are having kids and you are raising them. You may raise them in the ways of the Lord, but you might still have leftover circumstances from when you were growing up that you haven't been able to completely overcome yet. And so it can happen 2-3 generations down the road. There are still bad circumstances because of an ancestor's sinfulness. Now, this is not what people have popularly called generational curse. Generational curse is often expressed in a not a very complete way, because it's as if there's absolutely no way of fixing that or stopping that. And frankly, all of us who grew up differently, growing up under a different point of view or a practice, and are now walking in the ways of the Lord, we have broken that generational curse. We will not pass, as much as we can, we will not pass that generational curse down to our kids. Or we will at least have some influence to undo that generational curse that affects the next generations. And the more and the better and the more joyfully we walk in the ways of the Lord, the more we can erase that generational curse. Now, of course, when Moshe heard all this stuff, first thing he did is hit the ground, went down face first, and, you got to give Moses credit. This is for him a huge personal moment. He had asked for this a couple chapters back. He was asking for this. I think all the way back to chapter 3, he was asking to see God face to face. And so this is a big personal moment for Moshe. And yet, what is the first thing out of his mouth when all this happens? If I've now found favor in your view, Adonai, then please let Adonai go with us, even though they are a stiff-necked people, and pardon our offenses and our sins, and take us as your possession. This is the leader. Even in the middle of him getting what he's asking for just for him, he's now thinking of the people that God has tasked him to lead. So this is a wonderful indication of who is a good leader. A good leader isn't out seeking accolades for themselves. A good leader is, always interested in the people they are leading, getting the best benefits of doing what you're doing as a leader, and for everybody to get the best of it. So I know that's kind of a long soapbox for me to stand on, but that's it's kind of important. Okay, then we get back to again, we're making a covenant in front of all your people. I will do wonders such have not been created in the earth on our own nation, and you guys are supposed to do what I tell you to do. I'm going to make room for you amongst the Canaanites, drive them out and put you in. But don't go smashing their idols, smash their junk, get rid of all their altars. Don't even ask about how they worship their gods. Do not even, speak the names of their gods. This is why you have generic words for most all the gods listed in the false gods listed in the Bible. As we get to them, I'll point those out. In verse 14, that Adonai, whose very name is jealous, is a jealous God. Now, for what is God jealous? That we should be worshiping and taking directions from things that are false. Because God himself has already given to us, and from this time forward even a whole lot more, given us his instructions as to what he wants. He wants us to do, wants us to think, with whom should we walk and how should we walk. And like a loving father, he is jealous over his children's associations and affinities. Okay, and so as a good parent would be cautious to point out that maybe that particular channel you're looking at isn't healthy for you, and you shouldn't be looking at that. Why? Because your parent's jealous that you don't want to be pulled aside and led into a wrong direction. Okay, and so you have to make the hard decision to put aside that which is not good and do that which is right, and to follow through with that. Okay. And then verse 17 is interesting. Do not cast metal gods for yourself. And that's actually a really good translation. I like that because we're used to the King's English, a graven idol, which is okay because technically it says the same thing. But since it's Old English, we're not used to thinking what a graven idol is. It's something that is cast and carved into the final shape that it is. Okay, and we have throughout the Torah, and especially in a lot of the readings we get in the Haftarah readings, God points out the obvious. Why are you bowing down in front of something that doesn't talk, doesn't act, doesn't have ears that work? When you could be talking to him and hearing from him. And so just the silliness of turning to something that's not God. And in the modern context, we don't necessarily have a habit of bowing down before handmade images, but we do have a habit of treating persons and ideologies as if they were God and following what they teach as opposed to what God says. Everything from your horoscopes to a business guru that you don't even get out of bed in the morning until you read a passage from their latest, how to get rich and famous, like I did by writing books to people for people that pay me to write books, that kind of a thing. Okay. God reiterates that the firstborn, the Bikurim, it belongs to him. All the livestock, of course, at this point, God's already selected Levi to be the replacement for the firstborn of the male sons of people. David's saying plastic gods. Yeah, the little flat ones that have a bank name on them or something like that. Yeah. Firstborn must be redeemed. And since almost none of us are farmers of any type that we would have firstborn animals, it's a little bit outside our norm to even relate to this. But nonetheless, if we were farmers, we would want to try to find a way to make this work, even if we don't have a temple to bring it to. Okay, 6 days work, 7 day, the day of rest. Okay, interesting little addition to the commandment. Even in plowing time and harvest season, you are to rest. In both cases, you're in a big rush. Because in plowing time, you want to plow, get your seed in the ground just before the rains come, so the seeds get watered and they can start to grow. And in harvest season, you're in another rush because you want to get in the grain and the fruits and stuff before a rain comes and molds out all your grain and your fruits and stuff. But God tells us to trust Him even with the obvious problems of doing things exactly as He said. And this is where we need to learn to trust. Okay? So even though it's cultural to keep working 7 days a week until the plowing's done and the harvest is done, God says, keep that seventh day holy no matter what. And that's applicable to us on many different ways still. Okay? Festival of Shavuot, which comes after Pesach, after Chag Matzot. And this is just sort of an introduction on the idea, or a statement on the idea. We have more detailed instructions in other places. 3 times a year, your young men, all your men are to appear before the Lord. Just so happens these are the harvest festivals. Okay, Passover, Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles. You're expected to go there because you're going to be bringing, in some cases, first fruits, but you're also going to be bringing tithes, like in the Feast of Weeks, because you're finishing up the barley harvest, so you're going to finish bringing the last of your tithes into Jerusalem, and you're also going to be bringing the first fruits from the wheat harvest and the fruit trees and everything else that's starting up right about at that time. And so, yeah, you're not supposed to appear before the Lord empty-handed. You're expected to bring what's coming from your fields and your flocks. And then, of course, Sukkot. At the end, you have the finalization of the harvest season, and so the last of your tithes are going to be coming in. Okay. Interesting. There are a couple of exceptions to this, and I know I've read it before, but it really woke up for me this time. Verse 25, you were to not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, and the sacrifice of the feast of Pesach is not to be left until morning. Okay, the blood of the sacrifice with leavened bread. There's actually two basic sacrifices where leavened bread is actually used. One is in Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. Leavened bread is offered, but it's not done at the same as the it'll be on the same day, but it won't be done in intimate connection with the unleavened bread. And there's also I think it's one of the last offerings we went through at the beginning of this book, and I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but it kind of surprised me because there's an offering there with leavened bread. Even after saying don't use leavened bread with your offerings, then there's a one-off that says otherwise. Okay, the last of that section, you're not to boil a young goat in its mother's milk. This is said 3 times in the Scripture. The Orthodox have extrapolated that to mean that one should never have red meat and milk in the same meal. That's not what the text says. In all cases, it has to do with specifically a youngling with it being served or cooked or presented with its mother's milk. And it has more to do with a Canaanite practice of that day. It's a fertility thing. It's for trying to invoke a good harvest from the local gods. But nonetheless, that's, that's what the text itself says. If you're really into keto, this might be a little problematical, having, steak and some cheese at the same time. But if you want to be, strictly Orthodox kosher, that kind of keto doesn't work as well. But if you're not so concerned, then again, that's tradition. It's not scripture. Okay. Okay. After that, we have another. I'm sorry. I'm missing the reading all the commentary, so I'm not catching up on what you guys are saying. Sorry. Should probably.
Sorry.
You can move around to the other side, or
I can read it.
You can read it.
It says, but the leavened bread wasn't offered on the altar.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was presented, but it wasn't offered on the altar.
Yeah. And then Jonathan says, does that still apply about the milk and meat? But you already said that.
Yeah, it doesn't, in the sense that it's a traditional extrapolation. Okay. Nowhere is there a commandment that says never put these things together in any circumstance whatsoever. It's specific, boiling a kid in its mother's milk, or a calf in its mother's milk.
Do you want to scroll up from the comments just to see?
You mean up here?
Mm-hmm. Keep going now. I was just kidding.
That's okay.
You're good.
All right. Okay. Then we have, that's the end of our section anyways. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we...
just click the arrow.
Okay, we're already in chapter 24. 34. We need to move on to...
Yeah, click the arrow. This one.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get us to 30... Oh. Yeah, it's Numbers 28.
Yeah, that's what's next.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see what you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, you're a smart kid.
19 to 25.
19 to 25.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where am I here?
A little more. Wait.
16.
Did I say 19? Numbers 28, 19.
Is it 19 or 16?
19.
19.
16, just kidding.
That's what I thought.
16 and
Sometimes
20.
I'm not as dumb as I look. Just don't answer that.
16 to 25.
Okay, first month, the 14th day of the month, it's Adonai's Pesach. This is sort of reiterating what we're already going through. On the 15th day, notice this is the 14th day is the Pesach, and the 15th day is the Feast of Matzah. Okay? So this is where the Sadducees interpreted the beginning of the day is the 14th day, because it's supposed to be eaten at sundown. And then the Pharisees said it's supposed to be the end of the day because it's on the 14th day, which is at sundown. So, and so we're still dealing with that differentiation in the tradition. Okay, first day is a holy convocation. The 7th day is a holy convocation. So this is a little bit different, even though it's a grand total of 8 days involved in what we tend to lump together as Pesach. You'll notice it's the first day of Chag Matzot, which is the holy convocation, and the 7th day. So while this week, Wednesday evening, began the convocation, next week it's going to be Tuesday evening is the beginning. So it's not Wednesday to Wednesday, it's Wednesday to Tuesday this year. So so hopefully that helps to clarify. Okay. And then Also, so we also do verse 26, right? Yeah. Verse 26, the day of the first fruits. And again, you go through the reading, and to me it reads like it's the weekly Sabbath after Chag Matzot. Orthodox read that the first day of Chag Matzot is the Sabbath from which you begin counting the next day. To me, the text seems to read they're talking about the weekly Sabbath. And that's also the Sadducee tradition to use the weekly Sabbath. And so our timeline for counting the Omer begins tonight after the weekly Sabbath, whereas the Orthodox are already in day 2 or 3. And that's it's a difference of tradition. It's a difference in the way of counting. I know we run into this argument pretty much every year. So, okay, Barbara's saying you need a translation of "You are not to boil a young goat in its mother's milk," and you are not to boil a goat that is still milking to its mother's milk. Okay. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get that done running, because I'm not sure I know those words well enough to be able to just read it and tell you. So I think I'm going to have to do me a favor, because I'm liable to forget between now and then. Do me a favor, and if you can send that question to me in a text or in an email, I'll look it up and prepare an answer for you, okay? I just don't trust I'm going to be able to look at it and know enough of the words to give you a decent translation. Okay. So on the first fruits, new grain offering, another holy convocation. That's going to be in a month and a half, roughly, 50 days from now. 51, if you want to be technical. Don't do any kind of ordinary work. Burnt offering, and again, this is an offering made with leaven in the grain offering. Okay, so then again, this is going to be the end of the tithing as far as the early crops and the beginning of the first fruits of the end of spring, beginning of summer crops. So thank you, David. I look forward to enjoying a cheeseburger. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have two arguments with that. One is, of course, it's traditional and not biblical to separate the dairy with the meat. And the other is the observation that it's very likely that the stuff they put on your cheeseburger in a restaurant probably doesn't have much, if any, cheese in it anyways. That's just my 2 cents. So, some sort of other thing. Okay, any questions, comments, rebukes on our reading so far? Okay, let me, I know it's going to take a little while for the voice to catch up to where you can respond. It's okay. The way this is set up, if you have a question going back there and we need to refer back to it, it's an easy click for me to do it now, because my charming daughter set this up very nicely for me. Okay, so Yechezkel, Ezekiel 37, starting in verse 1. Okay, every time we read a prophet, the thing you want to remember is to whom was the prophet speaking and when. Grilled cheese is not a problem. There's no meat in the bread.
The butter.
Or butter. That's all dairy. It's just dairy and grain. So you're good. Something Jonathan asked.
Bread.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Ezekiel 37. Okay, so to whom was Ezekiel was a prophet, and when? Okay. Remember the mnemonics of remembering that we're speaking to Israel during the dispersion to Babylon and Persia. Okay. And you remember them because they're the name of a horse, of course. Okay. And this is a little bit dated because not everybody's familiar with the old TV show Mr. Ed. But it's supposed to be it's a TV show based on the wacky hijinks of what do you do with a horse that talks? And so there was it's a little jingle, little TV show, and so Ed, Ezekiel, Daniel. So if you think of Mr. Ed, you think of Ezekiel, Daniel, and so now when was Ezekiel a prophet? During the dispersion, primarily during the time of Babylon. More for Ezekiel, he seems to fade out of the picture about 2/3 of the way through the time out from the land, where Daniel seems to have lived for pretty much through all of it, although there's no record of him going back home. So Ezekiel was a prophet during the expulsion. So having known this, then we can see what the prophecy is talking about. We have a prophecy of going to a valley with a bunch of dead bones that are all laying about, all messed up. And he asks, God asks him to speak to the bones, and that the Complete Jewish Bible uses the word breath, which is actually the more accurate translation. However, that's on a technical level, because the prophecy is usually translated, make the Spirit, call out for the Spirit to enter these bones and to grow flesh on them and to put life in them. And so understand that the word ruach in Hebrew literally means breath. So it's clinically accurate to use breath here, and that's the word that's used in the text. However, it's also used for spirit. Just as Yeshua made that explanation, about the Spirit. You can see the effect of the Spirit, but you can't see the Spirit. And it uses the typical thing. You can see the effect of the wind, which, by the way, in Hebrew also uses the same word. so our Ruach HaKodesh, as we translate the Holy Spirit, can be actually translated as holy breath or holy wind. Although the context usually doesn't lend itself to that. It would be clinically accurate, but it's not usually that functional. Yeah. So, and so this is what the prophecy is. It says to prophesy over. So Ezekiel, speaks out over these dead bones, and while he's watching, they start reassembling themselves, and they grow ligaments and muscles, and flesh appears on the skin on them. But there was no ruach in them. There was no life in them. Now as you can tell, there's a little bit of a secondary meaning then, that there's no spirit, no life in them. And this would be sort of the condition of Israel as it's returning from the diaspora back to the land. And you can tell, this is actually, fast forward a few years, and this is a lot of what's going on even in Israel today. People are coming home to the land, but they don't necessarily have the Ruach within them. They're living, breathing people, but there's no Ruach of Hashem in in the people as much, and you can see that because there are multiple reasons for this, but as a general rule, Israel is a rather secular society, and so you have people who have life in them, but they don't have the breath of life, if you get the difference in them. And so that's what's going on. And so, and then, God says, go ahead and, call for the four winds, the heavens, the power of God to enter these people and fill them with real life. And so it happens. Okay, and then they were ready to do what God has set them up to do. Okay, and so the picture is, no matter where you came from, out there in your dead graves, come home, be filled with life, and do what God has set out for you to do. And this can be true for all of us, even if we're not in the land. Okay, to receive that life in us, to the Ruach HaKodesh, Ruach HaHashem, the Spirit of the living God, to dwell in us and to give us that life that we may do what He has called us to do. Okay, and the end result is you will be alive, and I will place you in your land. That's really cool. Okay. Then shortly we're going to have another discussion on the section that follows, but we're not reading that this week. So this is basically the premise. This is the setup. Now that the people are returned and alive, what are you going to do with them? And that's going to be, in a couple of weeks, we're going to run into this next section as our Haftarah. Okay, any questions, comments, rebukes?
Jonathan says, could it also be set apart spirit?
Yeah, because kadosh, the root word there is holy.
And then, funny they call that Aliyah organization Nefesh.
Yeah, nefesh b'nefesh. Yeah, soul to soul. Yeah, in a way, I think it's kind of reflecting this idea. You might be alive, but you're not really alive until you're in the land. Yeah. Whereas Israel today in this process of receiving the Spirit of the living God. It hasn't been a singular event where suddenly everybody who has Jewishness in them suddenly wakes up for wherever they're in the country and says, "Oh, I got to go to Israel and be filled with the Spirit of God." That you see this happening, but it's not been a singular one-time event. It's been more of a gradual thing. So, which take it however you will on that. Whether this is the way it was intended, or if there's going to be a finality where the last group comes and that's going to be the end of this prophecy. I don't know. We'll find out when we get there.
Also says they don't have spirit because they're not real Jew, or because they haven't received the Lord in their hearts.
Well, here it says they have life in them, and how you deal with the life that's in you. It goes back to whether or not you're dedicated to God. I have a hard time making judgments on people purely because of external. Sometimes it's easier to make a judgment, but we're really not supposed to. And I don't want to say just because somebody is Jewish, they have to be filled with the Spirit, or just because they're not Jewish, they're not. It's, we'll have to see. Even Yeshua warned us against, not staying connected to the vine. And so, excuse me, I don't like to immediately judge on externals. That's okay. All right, let's move on to our Brita Chadashah section.
John 11:38 to 57.
11.
38.
Oh, 38. That's why I said 11.
38 to 57.
Okay. Okay, here is Yeshua doing something that everybody knows can't be done. Okay. You have Marta, the sister of Eleazar. That's his name in Hebrew. Lazarus is the anglicized version of it, but Eleazar is his proper Hebrew name. And I like the King's English on this, because she says, by now his body must smell. And the King's English says, for behold, he stinketh. And so it's, technically it's accurate, but there's a little bit of a lilt in the King's English there, that it's the juxtaposition of the fact that everybody knows when somebody dies, it's over. And that's the mentality people are going with at this moment. He's dead, he's gone, he's in a very ripe condition at this point. Don't open up don't roll the stone away, because it's going to be, really bad smelling. So everyone's convinced this can't be done. Except Yeshua said, yes it can. Open up the cover. So they removed the stone. And it's kind of funny. Yeshua says a prayer. I thank you that you have heard me. I myself know that you always hear me, but I say this because of the crowd standing around, so that they may believe that you have sent me. And then he shouts to, Eleazar, come on out. Come on down. And he came out, all wrapped up like he was laid down. It's got to be one of those moments where some years afterwards, when everyone's gotten, calmed down a little bit from the shock of the moment, here's Eleazar trying to get himself out from them. These things must look like a really bad limbo contest. But, okay. So Yeshua is basically crashing everybody's expectations. Now, if Yeshua can bring Eleazar back from the dead, having been dead 4 days, can Yeshua resume his life and come back from the dead after 3 days? You see the precedent here. So precedent's made that it's possible to be resurrected to full health in your bodies in perfect condition. So we set the expectation. So when Yeshua says on the third day he will resurrect, even though people have a hard time believing it and they're still shocked about Eleazar, I'm sure. Yet, the precedent is set. Someone did 4 days can be resurrected. Someone did 3 days. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay. Now there's a little aftermath from this. Okay, and that's the some of them told what happened, told the Prushim, that's the Pharisees, And so the head Kohanim, the high priest, the head of the high priest, and the Prushim called a meeting. Now this should tell you, right now, something in the back of your head should be going, warning, warning, something's wrong. What's wrong with the head, the Kohen Hagadol, who was head Kohen at this time, and the Prushim? What's wrong with them getting together? Okay. The difficulty is the high priest is in the party of the Sadducees. He's Sadukim. Whereas the Prushim they don't get along. They don't get along. In fact, right about now, they would be arguing furiously with each other over which day, what time of the 14th was the Passover supposed to be done, and when do you actually start counting the Omer? They'd be furiously fighting for the next 50 days over this. And yet, right in the middle of all this, you have these guys getting together to decide what to do. Okay? So they called the Sanhedrin, which was the religious ruling body for Israel. So what are we going to do? This man's performing many miracles. Who's going to argue with the resurrection after 4 days? If we let him keep on going this way, everyone will trust in him. And here's the problem. It's not that he's wrong. It's not that Yeshua is wrong. But the Romans will come and destroy both the temple and the nation. Okay? Caiaphas, who was the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest that year, and there's a lot of intrigue and politics as to why he was the high priest that year, but don't need to get into that right now. I like the comment in Complete Jewish Bible Translation. You people don't know anything. You guys aren't seeing the proper picture, although that's what they said just before then. Okay. Nonetheless, there may have been a lot of argument in between that opening comment and the time that Caiaphas finally speaks up. You don't see that it is better for you if one man dies on behalf of the people so that the whole nation won't be destroyed. Okay? In other words, how do we deal with this? We get rid of the guy who's the troublemaker. We get rid of him, and then we don't have to deal with the Romans getting mad at us for promoting some person as God ahead of all the Roman gods. So that's going to cause no end of trouble. And don't forget, there's already been history with Romans slaughtering Jews for every reason that the Romans feel is necessary. So they're not looking forward to that happening again. So you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's better for one to die on behalf of the people so that the whole nation won't be destroyed. Now, and then the text inserts this explanation. Now, he didn't speak this way on his own initiative, but rather since he was Kohen Gadol that year, he was prophesying that Yeshua was about to die on behalf of the nation. And not for the nation alone, but so that he might gather into one the scattered children of God. Okay, so you have a little interpretive addition in here. Okay, the scene turns away from this discussion going on here to the narrator standing up on the side. Says he didn't talk this way because he knew what he was talking about, but rather this was Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of the living God, inspiring him to say this because that was exactly the right thing to say. The right thing. It was wrong for them to try and do it, but it was the right thing to say, that one will die for all. And the priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees are all going to conspire to bring about God's design for the rescue and restoration of all mankind. And the scattered, that is, the definition here for the scattered children of God, not just for Jews in the diaspora, but for all who turn to the living God. Okay? So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. But Yeshua no longer walked openly, but was moving around quietly. I keep reaching for the mouse on my left hand, but it's not there.
There are a couple questions.
Yeah.
David and Shirley asked, did Yeshua reverse his necrosis?
I would hope so. Otherwise, it's going to be a little difficult to live with the guy in that condition. And we know from one of the other texts that there was a sideline plot to kill Eleazar to silence the repetition of this event. So apparently he resurrected and was fine.
And then why in verse 35 did Yeshua weep?
I think probably because he's right here, 35.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Yeshua cried, but in King's English is Jesus wept. I think it was, he doesn't really explain it. So it's as much that he really had an affinity to Eleazar, but knowing that he's going to resurrect Eleazar, that wouldn't be a problem. I think it had to do maybe with the way people were mourning, and that Yeshua seeing the relative pointlessness, and this may not come across very, very kind, the relative pointlessness of mourning people who have passed, because if they are holy people, you are going to, if they belong to God, you're going to see them again anyways, and we're all going to be in a much better condition when that happens. So it's not a question that it's not that Greek philosophy is that that once you're dead and absolutely nothing else follows, it's all over. That's that. And I think it's his compassion for the people who don't see the obvious that he sees. All of us that belong to Yeshua are going to be together, forever. So it's we're sad and we weep and we mourn losing somebody, but we know there is a better resolution waiting when it's our turn. So I think that's my 2 cents on it. Anything else? Well, Yeshua did not see decay that's reported for anything. Eleazar, though, see in this translation, Marta says, by now he's going to be stinking, but in the King's English it says it as a positive statement. Behold, he stinks. So, or stinketh, because it's King's English. So I would say that's more than what it probably could be more the accurate. I'd have to go and look up the Greek. Okay. Anything else in our section? Oh, someone's already texting me. Okay, anything else to add? Okay. Have fun with your celebration tonight. Yafa mentioned that the handout...
Oh, sorry.
What's that?
No.
That's all right. I'll get to it. Yafa mentioned that the handout is for Yom HaBikurim is up on the website now. And so you can pull that down and have your family celebration tonight after sundown. All right. Glory saying, could it be that he felt compassion for the lost that have to die because of their disobedience? Yeah. That's entirely possible. It just says that he wept and didn't give us any other explanation, so there's a lot of room for speculation. So that's just as possible as every other answer. Okay, let's go ahead and close it down. Again, we found some getting to where I don't like this to say this every single time, but if you haven't yet, please subscribe so that you and hit the bell button so you're notified when we go live. Put down a like or a comment if you wish. It'll be a few minutes until this particular session is populated up onto YouTube. So you might want to come back, several minutes or an hour or so later. I don't know exactly how long it takes, but there's been a couple of these it's popped up pretty quickly, just a few minutes, and others it seems to have been longer. Oh, don't forget Wednesday Galatians right here on this stage at 6 o'clock, and I've already put up the handout for 1B, which is this coming session. So you can get started on looking at it ahead of time. Okay, I think that's it. Anything else left to do?
Abby, if you get tired of saying it, just have Abby do it.
Oh.
Naman.
And special thanks to our web mistress for getting this thing up and going. Elisheva wrote out a list of steps, and I was kind of blundering through them when Abigail came down and took over and snapped the whole thing into gear. So, and she's been my eyes. We still have to look on how to get the printing a little bit bigger on this, because I'm still fuzzy and hard for me to find a good focal point with it. All right. Well, God bless you, kids. Shalom, and we will see you online on Wednesday. God bless you.